Well, first of all, welcome to Oslo. I understand it's your first time here.
Thanks very much, Stian. Yes, it is. I'm very pleased to be in Oslo and Norway for the first time.
Well, you're very welcome. I thought we could talk a little about how, for example, technology can make us reach our goals in reducing climate emissions.
Sure.
And I understand you have some thoughts about this.
Well, we've done lots of things around this, Stian. It's a very interesting area, and everywhere around the world, of course, is very focused on these things. So I think the technology is important, but the most important thing is applying it. And so it takes leaders such as yourself to decide that something is important. And I think increasingly business leaders are realising that some of these changes are possible, and the technology is something that enables that to happen. And I think that's a very different shift. In the past, people have been very focused on technology for technology's sake.
What I have found is that a couple of years ago, many people felt that making the necessary changes to adapt to climate change and to try to reduce the effects of climate change was, in a way, the expensive choice. I think more and more people now are realizing that doing these changes actually can be the economic choice for the future.
Well, I think that's true, and countries like Norway in particular, which have significant resources and clearly have a long-term history of planning for the future and provisioning well, really do understand that these decisions are not short-term things. And so I think you're absolutely right. People are realising that by applying technology, they can change the level of service for a long time and really change the way things happen. I mean, just in the time I've been here in Oslo, I've been amazed at the number of electric cars. So clearly people see these things as important in changing the way in which the climate is affected by how we live in it.
We have, of course, quite a lot of incentives in achieving those goals, but what I think is it's interesting about the electric vehicle schemes we have in Oslo and Norway is that it actually has proven to work. Electric cars are now something that families buy. It's not just the city of Oslo who buys electric cars for our different services.
Well, I think another thing that you're showing, Stian, is something we see very broadly around the world in different regions, which is the blurring of lines between the public and private sector. So they used to be very separate. Public sector and government had a very clear view about what it did, and it kind of had a one-way conversation with its people, and commerce was somewhere else. But now we see, as you say, just to use your example, car manufacturers working closely with government around policy. Governments thinking about how do we integrate technology into policy that changes how people live their lives. So I think the embracing of the business community everywhere from large companies like IBM coming together with governments to deliver these capabilities and at the same time providing a technological richness that allows entrepreneurs to participate and really develop high-value jobs locally. And that's something we see in our projects, is the ability of these projects to attract talented people, highly educated people, people who really explore new parts of the economy, which over time, of course, delivers great value to the city.
What I think is a challenge for the public sector is finding ways to engage the private sector in our procurements. City of Oslo, for example, we make procurements for about 2.5 billion euros each year. And how we make those procurements is, of course, important, not just to us, but also in a way how to engage the public sector. What we are trying to do now is not do our procurements only in the traditional way, saying that we want a specific product, but more try to say we want a solution to a problem. We don't know exactly what that solution is. And then we engage the private sector to come up with the different solutions to a problem that we specify.
That's very encouraging, Stian. And again, we see this in the private sector. The private sector cares less about specific things when they go to tender to buy something, much more about results. And we're starting to see that in the government. And I think there's a great parallel with electricity in a way. Here in Norway you have an abundance of hydroelectric power, but when you use power you don't think about whether it's hydroelectric or whether it's nuclear or fossil fuel. You just use the power and you assume it serves the purposes you need. Keep your food cold or power the lights or whatever you need it for.
Heating house.
Heating the house.
It's very important in Norway.
Of course. But you don't get all excited about whether it's hydro from Norway or whether it's been imported from Denmark or whether it's just the power. And I think that's the model where we're starting to see organisations say we need management information about our transport system or about our water system or about how we manage buildings and energy. And it's kind of our problem to work out how to do that. It's our problem then to give you the information you need so you can make the decisions that you need to manage the business.
But I think also that we in the public sector can also try to lead by example. We are in Norway, the public sector is about 50% of the total economy. So what we do makes impacts.
Big impact.
And one example is we decided that we needed to renovate a senior citizen facility, and we decided why do it in the traditional way? Why don't we make this a real landmark on new technology, emerging technology, and make it a real environmental sustainable senior citizens facility? And all the investments we made in this facility is turning into a profit only in 5 years. So it's actually very good economics to do sensible choices.
Well, and I think there's a couple of things there. One of the things that, again, when you have a government as active and as significant as we have here in Norway, the rise of social networks is so powerful. So you can take ideas, there's very valid two-way communication, which is very, very immediate, which is a great value. And you think about how to do things differently. Innovation is so important now. Back to what I was saying earlier about the application of technology, you can take ideas from anywhere. And I think that's such a powerful thing that the new technology enables us, is visibility of all sorts of things that we can apply to new and different ways of solving problems.
One thing we as politicians need to be aware of is that when we make our procurements or try to make a policy and engage the private sector, we know only about yesterday's technology. That's what we know about. It's the private sector, it's businesses who knows about the current technology and even better, tomorrow's technology. And we can never procure that because we don't know it. So we need to find these ways to engage with the private sector in order to get the last and best opportunities there is. And also sometimes try to move the markets in a direction.
I'm delighted to hear it, Stian, and really when we look around the world at the most innovative projects, the innovative cities, it's always a person, it's always leadership that makes the big difference. And I think increasingly we're seeing cities rise in a way that national governments are kind of backing out of things a little.
I think it was the former mayor of New York, LaGuardia, who said that there's no democratic or republican way to pick up the trash. That's and right. I think he's quite right. Yes. We can make practical solutions, and cities will eventually have even more greater impact in solving these problems. For the first time in history, more than half of the population live now in cities. That number will rise to 70% in 2050. We consume 2/3 of the world's energy, and we contribute 70% of climate emissions. So cities matter, and cities are increasingly important in solving these problems.
I think cities like Oslo have something more to contribute. I think they're big enough to have these issues to consider, but they're small enough that leaders can still do something about it. I don't think it's nearly as easy to achieve these kind of results in the big cities of the world like Mumbai and Tokyo and Sao Paulo and New York, London, Paris and others. I think these are very complex places. In cities like Oslo, I think it's much more achievable to bring everybody around an agenda and with the right leadership to get the results.
And we can also, if we make something right here, we can inspire bigger cities and see if they can implement successes that we have. And then it will really make a global impact. It's very nice talking to you.
It's been a pleasure meeting with you too, Stian.
I hope you have a nice day here in Oslo.
I'm sure I will. Thank you very much, Stian.
Hope to see you again here.
You will. Thank you very much, Stian. Thank you.